we did, and I'm going to ask our rapporteur to give some of the points that were included in the actual discussion, but what we did at large was to try to shape something that could be useful to her. And we had, as an example, two things that could be very, very helpful. One is a letter that was written to the chairman and the ranking member of the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. This was a letter just a couple weeks ago, July 14th, produced by the Sentencing Project, and which has 60 undersigned organizations. Just as the senator had earlier said that she managed to get some things moving but never got credit, it's also true that we have a colleague here who helped to write this, and her name doesn't show up in here, but she's promised to help us with what we would like to do, and that is not only from our own working group, but from the three working groups, on behalf of the organization, to have something that goes to her and to others that may be identified on behalf of those who so desire to have their organizations written into the co-sponsoring of this. And the other thing was that the governor last year in February had announced a plan to help prisoners get college degrees, and this failed for various reasons. And this newspaper article from the Journal News, our local newspaper in Lower Westchester, has her name in it. Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson says a college education is a vital asset for men and women to move forward with their lives after prison. And so we want to see if there are ways to help advance this. And the senator has said that there was a lot of pushback from those who had various reasons for not supporting this idea, but we should push back the pushback. So perhaps we can do that too. Now I'd like to ask Peter DiBartolo to bring out some of the points that were raised during our discussions.
So we had an excellent conversation and really a dynamic discussion about a number of topics. I tried my best to kind of reframe these into recommendations. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these as really bullet points. Recommendations. Develop more comprehensive reentry preparation programs for former offenders, which will deliberately address the wide range of collateral consequences of conviction, such as implications for public housing, employment, civil rights, right to vote. Provide information assistance in navigating the post-incarceration landscape. Also consider the Fulton Correctional Model as a one-stop shop for former offenders when they get out. Also expand educational programs, GED and higher educational programs within prisons. Directly link this initiative to the impact on communities and reduce recidivism rates. What was highlighted in the conversation is that those who do not receive educational programs in prison have about a 44% recidivism rate. Those who receive educational programs in prison have less than a 4% recidivism rate. And if the public understood this as a recidivism issue, they would most likely be more in favor of promoting these educational programs. Also, we would like to promote closer and more transparent review of who serves on and is represented on rural boards. Develop a more proactive engagement approach with communities about closing prisons and expand transitional training programs for community members residing in areas where prisons will close. Develop additional economic opportunities and alternatives for such communities so that they can survive the closure of a prison. Within New York, a number of upstate areas, specifically in the Adirondacks, have challenges in this kind of area. Additionally, we would create cross-departmental and or cross-constituency task forces to discuss sentencing to meaningfully engage all stakeholders. Also advocate the eradication of mandatory minimum sentencing. Advance the Ban the Box campaign to reduce the use of the question about conviction from job applications. Reconsider and revisit the use of parole versus sentencing guidelines and their effectiveness, one approach versus the other. Also push for reduction of the use of solitary confinement. Advocate for changes in regulation and or interpretations of statutes and policies on former offenders obtaining public housing. reconsider the time limits prohibiting former offenders from voting, promote a shift in public discourse and cultural understanding of incarceration to reframe discussion in terms of rehabilitation, community building, and reducing recidivism, and also continue to resist the privatization of prisons in New York State and throughout the United States.